Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. The Outdoor Adventure Series celebrates individuals and families, businesses, and organizations that seek out and promote the exploration, stewardship, conservation, access, and enjoyment of the outdoors. Our guest today is Heather Physioc. Heather is a photographer and writer. She has a passion for traveling, exploring, photographing, and writing about the natural world, and hopes that her images and writing can inspire a closer connection to nature and a greater adoption and awareness of conservation needs. Heather is also the granddaughter of Bruce Cochran. Bruce was a cartoonist, illustrator, and author. He was also a celebrated member of the Outdoor Writers Association of America, where he served on its board of directors. He won numerous Excellence in Craft Awards and was the 2017 recipient of the prestigious OWAA Lifetime Excellence in Craft Award. Now, Bruce passed away this past August, and we are anxious to hear how Bruce inspired Heather to pursue her career path. Heather, it is a pleasure to have you on the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Fantastic. And first, my condolences and to you and your family, and may Bruce's memory be a blessing to anybody whose lives he touched. And just so wonderful to hear more about him and his work. And as a new member of the OWAA, I'm disappointed. I would love to have met him. It sounds like a fantastic and obviously talented individual. So just anxious to hear more about his life through your eyes. And before we do get into that conversation, I would love if you could share with our audience a little bit more about your background and your experiences and how you came to enjoy the outdoor lifestyle and through your work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, truthfully, it in large part started with Bruce, my grandfather, taking us out to do fishing or hunting down at his farm over the years, and his passion and appreciation for the outdoors and bringing us along for that definitely was a big part of what inspired me to stay outdoors for the rest of my life. And that's just always appealed to me in general, just wildlife and animals in general, since being a little kid and caring about the environment since a little kid has always just drawn me in. And I think on the subject of Bruce, his ability to bring his creativity to that and connect his passion for the outdoors and for wildlife and conservation with his creativity was super inspirational. It took me a little bit longer to arrive at that connection that he did much younger in his life, but he sort of showed me that it was possible.
When you were growing up, did did your parents like drop you off at the farm for the weekends or for summer and say, we'll pick you up the week before you got to go back to school? And your grandfather just kind of woke you up and said, okay, we're going out. What were some of the activities that you were engaged in at that early age?
Yeah. It was a lot like that. I mean, I was very fortunate that my brother and I, we grew up near our grandparents. And so it was very common for us to spend a weekend with them, stay over at grandma and grandpa's house, or they would pack us up in the car to head out to Mavis's pond to do some fishing and hiking around the pond to see what was going on there. Or going down to the farm with our grandparents, we would stay in the trailer that's on the property, but we would walk around and see all the duck ponds and the duck blinds and the pecan trees, or we would make brown bears over the campfire that had like biscuits wrapped around a stick. Oh, that whole just being outdoors experience was a lot of fun. Also, just as a kid, I was frequently headed out the door with my friends to play around in the woods or explore the creek near our house, and just kind of getting into outdoor mischief. It was kind of a way of asserting our independence as little kids within safe boundaries to go out and play outside. Yeah, it
You
just
know,
stuck with me.
I love that because in this day and age, we just don't let our kids out.
Yeah.
and just explore like, okay, it's the summer, go outside, don't come back until you hear the bell
Yeah.
ring,
Yeah.
things like that. So as you were going outdoors, let's start like in your neighborhood, you've got the ponds. What were
Mhm.
some of the activities that you were involved in around your area that kind of started to influence and imprint itself on you about, oh, this is kind of fun. I like doing this. Yeah. What were some of those activities?
Gosh, I'm immediately what I'm picturing is going out with my friends. They're still my friends today, by the way, from first grade onward. These have been my friends. And there
Fantastic.
were these railroad tracks that went behind their houses. And so it had wooded area on either side of the railroad tracks. So I'd say more often than not, we would head out to explore along the tracks and in the wooded areas so we could build forts, of course, and dream up these very imaginative scenarios for what we were doing in these outdoor forts. But I mentioned exploring the creeks and the woods near our areas. A lot of that was really basic stuff, like just observing the wildlife in our area. I remember I had like a bird watching book that someone had given me as a kid. So I would go out and I would take notes on the robins and the blue jays or the Canada geese in Kansas City. And those are so common here that it doesn't seem all that exciting, maybe to an adult who's seen a lot of geese and a lot of robins. But as a kid, it's just teaching you to be really present in nature and observant of the things that are around us and realizing that that nature is in your own backyard. So I think more than specific activities, it was just existing in nature and being comfortable in that environment, being observant and present of the certain with the things that are around us that made the biggest impression. But it also led to a lot of just walking and hiking is a big part of my outdoor experience now, and it's a huge asset to my photography effort now
Mhm.
because I'm willing to walk to far and remote places to get pictures that a lot of people may not see. So maybe, if anything, it taught us to look at the world and our surroundings through our own lens, see things through our own way. And now I'm trying to translate that, how I see the world and those things that I'm observing or feeling when I'm out in the environment. Now I'm trying to communicate through my writing and my photography, so other people who can experience that too, who may not be able to get there themselves.
And today, 2022, I had to think about that. I was still in 2022. The year's going by very
Yours.
fast. When you go outside today, how much has changed in your environment
Mm.
versus when you were growing up? And the reason I asked that, I grew up in Michigan, in a
Mhm.
suburb north of Detroit, and I vividly remember our backyard was a field, and the next thing houses are being built. And in Oak Park, we had some wood so we could go and explore, but you had to drive quite a distance to get out to a county metro park or a state park. And I'm curious how much has changed in your area since you grew up.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a blue collar suburb south of Kansas City. And as a kid, everything feels bigger. When I go and look at it now, everything seems much smaller than I seem to remember those woods and those railroad tracks and those fields looking when I was much younger. Where I grew up in Grandview, which is south of Kansas City, I felt like the I don't feel like it has actually changed dramatically in that immediate vicinity. It's more like zooming out and looking at our whole community, our whole metropolitan area where I really see the change that's happened over the last several decades. I think with it's kind of hard because Kansas City is a really beautiful, balanced community, I think, where there's this balance between the residential life and the city life and the outdoors. And I don't feel like it's changed dramatically in volume one way or the other. I don't feel like cities have taken over our outdoor spaces, but I am seeing this sort of renewed energy around our green spaces and around our natural resources like the rivers and the creeks and things like that. I think we have a long way to go to really protect those areas and create more of those green spaces that our community needs, especially in underserved communities where there's not a lot of green space, even though science says that that's such an important part of people's well being, or there's not enough shade in those areas. So I guess what I'm saying is things have not changed all that dramatically from when I was younger, where I grew up, but I see very specific areas where I think we should change and where I hope that I will see us change headed into the future. But that requires effort to put in those green spaces and create that kind of exciting outdoor exploratory experience that I had as a kid for more parts of our community. I hope that everybody can have an experience like I had growing up, and that it will inspire more people to get out in the outdoors and do good things about it and with it.
Very good. Very good. And I'm curious, and perhaps you could fill in a little bit as you were getting older and deciding I want to go off to college and study. What was your desire at that point? You graduated high school and going to go off and start that next phase of my life through the university. Where did you go? What did you study?
Yeah, I went to the University of Missouri, so I didn't go too far from home, but it
Okay.
was very intentional.
Okay.
University of Missouri has one of the best journalism schools in the country.
Okay.
So I always wanted to be a writer, and I always wanted to be a fact-based writer, feature journalism, think newspapers and magazines. So yeah, I went to the University of Missouri hoping that I would get even more education and experience writing about important causes. I've always had kind of a lean toward cause-based writing,
Okay.
exposing issues or digging deep into things and really exploring why things are the way they are. And I had been writing in different formats for years leading up to going off to college. And then in college, I was able to really just dig deeper into that. So while I didn't go on to be a professional journalist, who knows, maybe I'll have a second act. But for now, I'm not a professional journalist. I use writing in more commercial ways as my day job. So I'm having to bring that education, that passion for the more investigative journalism or feature journalism stuff into my creative pursuits with Casey Traveler, with the blog that I write about travels and conservation and animals and in the outdoors and things like that. So yeah, even though it kind of I had some detours along the way, I feel like I'm finding a lot of ways to bring that education experience into the things that I'm doing now. It was a great place to do it. You get exposed to a lot of different people, a lot of different types of writing, or a lot of different ways of exploring and understanding the world. And I think I bring that into everything I'm doing now.
Okay. What influences did your grandfather have on you in your career pursuit to go to the University of Missouri to pursue the journalism education?
Yeah,
What if any?
all of them. I mean, I grew up spending a lot of time in granddad's studio, his art studio. And he would equip the grandkids with markers or art supplies. We were allowed to use anything in the space. It just had to get put back exactly where we got it from. But it was a place that was very open for us to imagine and create. But he was also really great at sharing with excitement the things that he was working on, cartoons that he was publishing or stories that he was publishing. My favorites were always the ones that he wrote about his black labs. I just love, 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 love dogs. So those were always my favorites. But he showed us his creative pursuits and how they came to life in the real world. And then he was also amazing at fostering my interests. If I wanted to be outdoors and see animals, we'd go outdoors and see animals. If I wanted to write about music, which I did for many years, he introduced me to musicians he knew in the area. There was this jazz singer in Kansas City. Her name was Angela Hagenbach. I think she's still in the area. So he taught me a little bit about jazz and then introduced me to people so I could go interview them and write about them. If he could make a connection between things that he knew or people he was connected to and things that I was expressing an interest in, he did that. And that just felt really supportive and inspiring. It's always been inspiring that my grandfather was an independent creative, which is such a big deal to me. An independent freelance cartoonist for 63 years, and he was successful at it. He not only survived, he thrived. So that gives me hope that
Yeah.
I too can make creativity and the things that I care about and love to do and see a huge part of my life and still sustain myself through that. I may not ever make it a full-time career like he did, but I'm inspired to put that effort in and allow myself to explore that and be creative in new ways.
Well, you're off to a great start and just through your work. And what was it like to get feedback from him? I mean, we get feedback from a lot of different places, our family, our friends. They want nothing but the best for us. Sometimes feedback, though, has to be truthful, hopefully
Mhm.
kind. What was it like to get feedback from him about s- a piece of work, whether it be art, a photograph, or some writing, an approach? What was it like to get that feedback from him?
I'm getting emotional just hearing the question. It was amazing because I felt like I had a creative partner and sounding board with him. We emailed back and forth a lot once he moved to Florida, just sharing our work back and forth, offering feedback. And of course, we're both very supportive and encouraging of everything. But towards the end, in this last few years, especially as I've gotten more serious about my writing and photography, my grandfather was my first audience to show that work to be excited about it and vulnerable about it with him, but also seeking kind, empathetic feedback to continually improve my work. So like writing advice, I am a very long-winded writer. That investigative journalism and featured journalism, deep dive stuff really it adds word count. But he was brilliant at creating these really tight stories that could get placed in magazines, like really singularly focused, whereas I tried to cover end to end on different issues. So that was just a great piece of advice he was giving me toward the end there about how to really pull out the nugget of a story and zero in on the most interesting or engaging parts of that story. So that's actually like a process I'm in now is figuring out how to make stories more individual, powerful units that really resonate with people more concisely. I'm still working on that. I just wish I had more time to get more advice and feedback from him because he had decades of experience and exposure to these different forms of art and writing and visually. Yeah, I'm gonna totally fall apart here in a minute.
That's okay.
But
That's what
my
this podcast is all about. I want
getting in the
vulnerability.
soul, getting in the feelings. But yeah, at the very end, I brought some photos to the hospital to just sit with him and have something to talk about. And he told me how far I'd come in my photography. And it was just really, really cool to hear. I think he was really excited that I was following my own version of the path that he was kind of on to, bridging that gap between our passions for the outdoors and creativity and communicating through various he may have communicated through cartoons and they were hilarious and relatable and these wonderful slices of life and yeah it whereas my method for communication or my means is through images. I hope a picture is worth 1,000 words and we were both writers so I think that just really tickled him that we were sharing these creative pursuits and common interests. You know, he always said that he felt like we had a special bond, that I it was so much more than this, but this was definitely part of that. We just related on different levels.
That's fantastic. And what I love about what you are sharing with us today is just that deep bond that you had with your grandfather, and just it was so intertwined. His passion, your passion, and I love the this insight or advice from him. The feedback is pull out the nugget, zero in. And was there a model of sort? Did he have a formula, or what was that advice, and how do you zero in? How do you find the gold in nuggets and kind of mine it for all it's worth?
Yeah, gosh, I wish I had that email in front of me right now because it was mind blowing. I just remember going, "Oh my gosh, I need to try this." But yeah, he basically said that getting the ideas out and writing the full stream of consciousness content, that part comes easy. That the really hard part is the whittling it down and refining it down. And I don't know if there's some super secret trick or technique, but it just sounds like you have to be kind of merciless with the material. You have to not be married to what you created and as empirical as possible during that editing process to
Mhm.
you can't be precious about what you wrote if you're going to boil it down to the most juicy stuff that other people are going to want to consume. But that's on the writing front. On the cartooning front, I don't know if he had a formula per se, but as I'm digging through these bins of his old cartoons and there's this whole bin of rejects. By the way, he did an email called, I think it was called the reject of the month or something like that. And then he would find old rejects that could not get published. Sometimes it was because they were just too raunchy. Other times they just didn't quite hit for whatever reason. But a lot of them are just absolutely hilarious. But you'll find these like sections where it's kind of a similar theme and he's just testing out different turns of phrase or slightly different scenarios. But you can tell he's hit on something that feels really funny, really relatable. It's like, I know there's something there, but he'll just try these different turns of phrase. So, for example, there was this one set that I saw where it was all about people selling used cars claiming it was only driven by an old lady on Sundays. And so that
Right.
was really funny to him. And he just kept changing the object or changing what the old lady did with it on Sunday. And you could see him just working that process to find the one that he eventually landed on and was able to sell. And you could also see mechanisms like role reversal. So if he's doing these outdoor cartoons with wildlife and hunters, for example, he may take these human situations and reverse the roles so that the animals are commenting on the humans and so the humans are commenting on the animals. So you see that kind of theme emerge in some of his work over time. He was also really great at pulling like the latest news or technology into that creative as well, which just infuses new life into something that was funny in a different way before. The one that comes to mind is it is some hunters by a duck blind and he's aiming his shotgun up at the sky at something that's flying. And then the hunting buddy says, wait, don't shoot. That's the new wading boots I ordered or something like that. And it's the Amazon Prime drone thing dropping off I'll never do it justice, verbalizing the jokes the way that the cartoon so beautifully and concisely captures. But it was definitely revealing to his technique on how he found the funniest parts of humanity and these outdoor mishaps to bring that to life on the page.
I love that. And by the way, Heather, this is the point in the show where I become the opportunistic podcaster. In our show notes on our website, we always include a number of photos, some collages. And if they're, and I know, how do you distill down 63 years of life and the works of art into 3 or 4 pictures to put on a collage? But I know you'll do your best. But
I
if there's
think I
some
can do this for
photos,
you.
I think you could do this. Just a couple shots of Bruce's work, even the rejects for that matter,
Oh,
and
yes.
of course, some of your work that we can put on our show notes. And I would really appreciate that. I know our listeners or viewers to our website will appreciate that as well.
Oh, of course. And you know what? I think he would want to share those cartoons with everyone as long as we will tolerate it. His whole mission in life was to make people laugh. So if those cartoons can live on beyond him, then I think he would
Right.
just love to share that with your readers.
I love that. I love that. As I was going through Bruce's website and looking at the cartoons, the one that I saw on the site that I thought was just funny was these hunters that just come back and they'd had a great day of hunting, the bird hunting, et cetera, quail. And the poor dog is just totally collapsed on the ground. It's like, you know,
Accurate. That
yeah,
sounds right. That checks out.
yeah. I
But is
mean,
there
there's
ever a happier moment for a black lab, though?
yeah, it's like, it's a job well done, a job well
Yeah.
done. Did your grandfather ever go off on assignment? I know, and there's a reason I'm asking this is on his website is the Heart of America Fly Fishers National Rifle Association, Outdoor on Wisconsin Outdoors, Outdoor Writers of Kansas, Wild Fowl Magazine, Ducks Unlimited. Lots of opportunities to go off on assignment, I would imagine. First, can you confirm whether he did that? And second, did you ever go with him on assignment?
Mm, sort of.
Okay.
Here's the tricky answer. So for a long time, like 5 or 6 years, he was a cartoonist for USA Today. And he had a
Right.
sports cartoon called Fun and Games with Cochran. And so it was always sports themed, obviously. Various sports, wasn't a specific sport, but it tended to be very timely and relevant to major sports events at the time. Now, I just heard this story secondhand, but I
Okay.
absolutely believe it. It checks out about my grandfather. So, like, he took his wife, Carol, they were married 64 years. He took her on like a trip to Hawaii as research for the USA Today sports cartoon, and then takes in the expenses to the tax person. He's like, I'm not sure you can write off this Hawaii trip as tax deductible as an independent cartoonist. But he's like, how am I going to draw cartoons and write about this Hawaiian golf tournament if I can't go to Hawaii and see the golf tournament? So he was very clever in how he went on assignment. But no, I mean, it led to fantastic work. So I argue it was tax deductible. So there's that. And then I don't know if he went out on assignment so much with the magazines, so much as took the experiences in his world to create content that he then pitched to place in those publications. It seems like that was more common. So when he would go on any outdoor trip, so think like the OWAA conferences, for example, or just a fishing trip with his friends. Like I know he really liked fishing on the San Juan River in Colorado. He had, this is one of my favorite things about him. He had these journals, these like notebooks that he would
Right.
just write a quick funny little blurb about what happened. Sometimes it was just observing, but most of the time it was hilarious little quips about the mishaps that happened on the trip. And he brought this tiny little watercolor set that he would paint into that journal as well. So there's all this original artwork. And this goes back to like the early 1990s. And he did this up until he died. So there's like 15 or 20 of these little outdoor journals. And so a lot of the stories and the memories and the hilarious little cartoons come out of these real world experiences that he had. So he started with his life and then created the work for most of his career rather than the other way around of taking an assignment and going out and completing that assignment. I think he really thrived with that independence and freedom to be as openly creative as he wanted to be. So now those journals are just an absolute treasure in our family, and going through them is such a blast. Like we're seeing these memories of when my brother and I were little kids going out to fish, and we found a snake in the rowboat, and we're beating it with the paddles and trying to get it to go away. And somehow there were two mice and a snake on the boat. I don't know how the snake didn't get its dinner, but okay.
Right.
Or there was this one that we just read recently where he said, Dustin so and so has been hunting all of 1 hour of his entire life, and he's shot more ducks than I have all month or something like that. I hate him. Just getting inside his head is absolutely a treasure.
Those journals, I mean, they're priceless. I mean,
Price.
just priceless. I love that. I am curious, was Bruce self-taught or did he have a mentor? Did he go to school to hone his craft of cartooning?
Yeah, great question. I think he was creative since childhood. Even just the humor mechanism in his brain was there from day one. But I think he was also surrounded by very creative people growing up. Like there are a lot of
Okay.
paintings on my grandparents' walls from his mom, Fannie Mae, or I know
Okay.
his sister Adrian drew him this when he was a little kid, drew him this very helpful comic strip like guide for how to brush your teeth and how to make your bed and how to change into your pajamas at night. So I think he was surrounded by creativity, which probably fostered it from a young age. Beyond that, like he always pursued creative endeavors. He worked I think the high school newspaper, the yearbook or something like that when he was in high school.
Mhm.
In college, he played music and he was doing art and design. He got his BA in design, and then after that, he worked for an ad agency very briefly. He said, "I learned immediately that is not what I wanted to do." Drawing pictures of hamburgers and products was not his thing. But he also drew cards for Hallmark cards here in Kansas City. And after that, it just transformed into him defining his own creative style. But he was very versatile too.
Mhm.
So yes, he does these cartoons, and those are his specialty, just his absolute best work. But he also illustrated books. Some were his own, some were other people's. He did a lot of watercolor painting. Like he had a puzzle made by homework out of one of his paintings. So I think, and I have like wood block print Burbank pet prints that he's done. So he just explored and experimented with a lot of things before he arrived at the ones that he would do the most, the ones that he felt really passionate about.
I I always wondered who actually created Hallmark cards, and
Mm,
just at least the artistic side of it.
yeah.
I think the words are something totally different. But thank you for at least enlightening me, and that's what was going on in Kansas City. I love that.
Yeah.
As you went down perhaps to Florida to visit, and you get through the hugs and the kisses, so good to see you, what have you been up to? And you kind of go out into the community, into a restaurant, and Bruce comes across a friend of his. How does he introduce you?
Oh gosh. He There's always like this like glimmer in his eyes when he was introducing his grandkids. He had 5 grandkids. I'm the oldest.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know how to explain this. I'll try to articulate it. So he had
Okay.
this glimmer of pride in his eyes to begin with. He was just proud and loved his grandkids. Very simple, but very profound emotion. But there was almost like this space he would open up. How do I explain it? He would introduce us and we take the conversation from there. And he would maybe cue up something that he felt was related to that person's interest. So she writes or she works in advertising, whatever it is. But I think it was profound in that that's kind of mirrored how he treated us and was part of our upbringing was just
Mm.
creating space to be ourselves and do things our own way. So in the last few days, when I was talking to him while I was in Florida at the hospital with him, we were just talking about the OWAA. And again, he was just so excited that I had joined this.
Sure.
He specifically brought up, he was like, I didn't push you to do that though. Like you did it on your own. You join on your own. And he was just so excited about that
Mm.
just as much as me being in this with him. He was excited that I kind of arrived at that in my own way, in my own time, and took that action independently. So it was that glimmer of pride and ownership of family, but it was also pride in their independence and each one of his grandkids being unequivocally themselves.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that. Let's chat a little bit about the OWAA. Bruce is a longtime member.
Yeah.
When did that organization begin to get on your radar? That,
Yeah.
my grandfather's a part of this organization. He talks about it. I mean, board of directors, excellence in craft awards, lifetime excellence in craft award. I mean, there's longevity and there's accomplishment to in all of that.
Yeah.
When did the OWAA really begin to come on to your radar as like, this is another way to continue this legacy?
Yeah. I mean, for years, he would show work that he had submitted to the Excellence in Craft Awards or talk about his experiences at the conferences and all the outings around the OWAA conferences. So it had always kind of been in the background for me, but it wasn't until later when I started to get more serious about my own photography and my own writing and kind of picking what I wanted to write about, which is outdoors and conservation, all that only then did I kind of put 2 and 2 together. Oh, wait, that applies to me also. And just kind of connected the dots. I'm sure there are many, many organizations out there that are wonderful to be a part of, but
Sure.
already having some familiarity with the OWAA through my grandfather definitely pushed me over the edge. So his evangelism for the organization being a good one with good people definitely spoke to me. But, something else I've learned just in the wake of his passing is how many lifelong friends he made in this organization. Like I knew he had good connections, and that was interesting to me because I wanted to learn. He talked a lot about how he learned from the people in the organization. When he was younger, entering the organization, how much he learned from more senior members of it. So it just kind of stuck. And then at the moment it was right for the picking, I went for it. Yeah, he was always really, really proud of the Excellence in Craft Awards in particular, but this most recent one, the Lifetime Excellence in Crafts, I cannot begin to tell you how proud he was of that honor. So I just kind of wanted to experience that firsthand. I have not personally had the courage to enter these contests yet, but just like knowing that they provide feedback on and award really great work was kind of exciting too. But yeah, once I started writing and producing my own creative works, I thought I wanted to learn from a great group of people, and he spoke so highly of him. It was my first and only choice.
Fantastic. And if I'm not mistaken, I know, or I had heard that you had planned on attending your first conference next year in Gulf Shores with him.
Yeah. Yeah. That was the dream. We were going to go to Gulf Shores together. He was really, really excited about it, but I'm going to go. I'm going to go
But
anyway.
I will
uh,
be there. I'm going to meet.
and so
We're
I'll
gonna,
meet some friends for
yes.
sure because my grandfather will be there to introduce me. But, if anybody's been in the organization with them a long time, I am sure we'll have a lot to talk about and a lot in common right away.
In the old fraternity realm, which I am not a part of anymore, we used to have what we call legacies. And you, as I understand it, just given your background, your grandfather's background, you are a legacy.
Oh,
And
I
you're
hope
going to
so.
be arriving there to open arms from a lot of people who, like I said, his memory is a blessing to anybody whose lives he touched. And it goes the other way as well.
Yeah. I'm totally blown away by the outpouring of love and support from all of the people in the organization and beyond, just in lives he's touched all across the industry, publishers he's worked with for decades, friends he went out on the fishing boats with. I mean, it's just incredible that these are not casual friendships. I can tell by the communicate. They're calling me his granddaughter to talk to me about him. So clearly he made his mark in more ways than just making people laugh, which was his number one priority, but also just building these lifelong friendships and relationships and staying in touch for years and years and years and years and years. It was clearly important to him. I'm really excited to be a part of it and have that little piece of him.
Fantastic. And most definitely that it's a wonderful organization. And Heather, when I am not podcasting, my other side hustle is I am a career development coach.
Oh,
And and I say that not just to tell you I'm a coach, but one of the things that I do is to encourage my clients to lean in even to things that are uncomfortable.
yeah.
So very soon in this next quarter, we're going to get an email that the Excellent Craft Awards are getting planned for next year, and it's time for our submissions. And so my encouragement
Well,
for you
certainly.
is to do it. Just do it.
I think
And
I will. I think I will. I'm ready to get the feedback. And you're so right. You got to be vulnerable, put the work out there if you really want to grow. And I just need to do it.
just need to do it. I mean, you got to take a sip of something and do it. Do that, but
I might.
just do it. I look forward to it in any case. Before we head out today, is there anything else that you would like to share about your grandfather, the influence he's had on you, your sibling, your cousins? Anything else that you would just kind of want to share about your grandfather?
Besides everything, I just
Right.
wish everybody could know him the way we knew him. But
Yeah.
in the absence of that, it's really clear to me, like I said, his number one priority in life was making people laugh. There's a great Joan Rivers quote about when you make people laugh, it's like a little vacation. You give them a little vacation, and what a gift to
Mhm.
give people. And so he had this really natural, innate ability to notice the absurdity of life and appreciate the absurdity of life. And so I hope that we can all take something from that to maybe take things a little bit less seriously, take ourselves less seriously, take all the bad stuff in the world and move through it with empathy and joy and humor and all of those things. He just embraced it. And I think because mishaps and absurdity makes for great humor, it probably made him really resilient and even appreciate those moments where things are going wrong because he knows it's going to make a hilarious story later. We should all be so flexible. So I hope that we can all bring a little bit of that Bruce Cochran, some levity into our worlds. Definitely, and it reminds me to not take myself so seriously every single day.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Appreciate that. Now, before we head out, we do have a couple segments, and I kind of feel one of them is called Insight to Go, and I kind of believe what you have just gifted us with is a little bit of an insight, and I think our listeners will definitely appreciate that. I am also curious, and this leads into our next segment, the aha moment, where there's perhaps another influence on you. Could be a book, a quote, something that after having worked with it, you realize I am very much doing what I was meant to be doing. And you feel and you want to be able to share that out to the rest of the world. What would be your aha moment?
Yeah. So just bring this is going to bring us all together. Hard.
Okay. Okay.
So I learned from my grandfather about being vulnerable and pitching your work and putting things out there and letting people see it in all its raw glory. And I mentioned that I have struggled to get the guts to submit my work and be vulnerable in that way. I'm just kind of a natural perfectionist type where if it's not perfect, I don't put it out in the world. I really have to challenge that. And so I tend to set these really big, grandiose goals. And if I get even a little bit off track, I get really discouraged. But just in the last year or two, I read this book by James Clear called Atomic Habits. And it's all about building or breaking habits in like really bite sized, actionable moments without all the pressure. It creates a lot more grace. So it's intended to be this very functional tips and tricks and best practices for making bite sized habits or changes that become habits, but it completely hacked my brain. It completely changed the way I was thinking about things. It really enabled me to, instead of making my photography or my writing about a goal or a finish line, which isn't how the creative arts work, it is a lifestyle or a continuous habit. So instead of doing that and like not exploring, not putting myself out there and being more experimental with my photography, how could I make the learning and experimentation my daily habit, 2 minutes at a time to learn something new, try something new. And so it has had way outsized effects on me in that I am more vulnerable. I am trying more things. I am more consistent in learning because I have found ways to make this more habitual practice. It's a practice for a reason. You're supposed to keep practicing it. So yeah, I would recommend that to anyone. It's great for just kind of getting your life in order and making the changes you want to make in your life. But for me, it was all about creating that grace and consistency for the things that I care most about.
Fantastic. And we'll definitely provide a backlink to Atomic Habits in our show notes.
Well,
Now, yeah. And I actually, uploaded it for my Audible because I don't collect books
okay.
anymore unless they're on Kindle or Audible books. Because one thing I don't like is moving across country with boxes of books.
Amen.
No, no more.
Love my library card.
There you go. There you go. If our listeners would like to learn more about you and your work, also Bruce's work, where are the best places for them to go?
Yeah, great question. Thank you very much for highlighting independent artists. So for me, I'm online on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, all the things as Heather Physioc, or my website is KC Traveler. So it's KCTRVLR.com. I know that's wacky, but I'm sure you'll put it in your show notes. And then I would love it if you would take a moment to go look at my grandfather's life's work. There's a small section of it on his website, which is cochranscartoons.com, COCHRANS cartoons.com. And it's got snippets from the 15 books he's published, a handful of the cartoons from the thousands he's published, illustrations, writing. It's just a multi talented creative individual, and his work should definitely continue to live on.
Fantastic. And we will most definitely provide the backlinks to your website, your social sites, and most definitely link back to your grandfather's sites at cochrenscartoons.com. And I know our listeners will want to kind of visit that page and just kind of see the wonderful work. And they may even recognize a piece of work or two. There's a couple there that is like, I've seen that before.
There's this joke going around the family about how he's famous, but no one knows it.
I love it. Heather, thank you so much for spending time with us, talking about your work, gifting us about the memories you have of the time spent with your grandfather and really even your siblings and your cousins. I mean, just the influence that your grandfather had on them as well. And just I wish I had had the opportunity to meet him, but I just know from the reactions on the OWAA's page and the commentary that just how special he was. And so truly grateful for the gifts that you've given us today of sharing your memories of him.
Thank you so much for giving me a space to do it. He's a great guy.
Fantastic. Well, listen, stay on the line. We'll do a quick chat, but then I'm going to do a quick close and we'll be right back. Okay.
Sounds great.
All right, folks. We have just been chatting with Heather Physioc, photographer and writer, and really about her adventures, kind of going into the family business of sorts. I mean, just the influence of her grandfather, Bruce Cochran, as cartoonist, writer, illustrator, creative with over 60 years of just producing content to make people happy and to perhaps get people a little bit out of their comfort zone, get them a little off center, maybe to get a new insight on their own. And really loved how Heather shared about the influence her grandfather had on her and her work, and just how that over the years has built up so that now she is an accomplished explorer, outdoor enthusiast, photographer, writer, and really also her passion for the awareness of what it means to be outdoors, conservation, stewardship, and access to everyone. And we also appreciate the influence that the OWAA had not only on Bruce, but hopefully is also now going to have on Heather as well, as she really kind of continues kind of like that fraternity or sorority kind of struck, which is the legacy. And really excited to hear about how Heather embraces her role as a member of the OWAA as well. And I definitely look forward to meeting her next year in Gulf Shores, where we're going to have our annual conference. Now, do want you to make sure you visit our show notes. There's a number of media that Heather shared with us in the show notes, and you'll be able to find that on her website, actraveler.com. We're also going to provide the backlinks to her social sites, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And we're also as well going to provide the backlinks to Bruce Cochran's website at cochrenscartoons.com. As for us, you'll be able to hear this episode, check out some of the photos that Heather is going to share with us on our website, which is outdooradventureseries.com. You can find us on our Outdoor Adventure Series pages on LinkedIn and on Facebook. And you can listen to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. We are all over the place. Okay, folks, again, hope you enjoyed today's episode with Heather. And until then, go out there, have a phenomenal day. Take care of yourselves, take care of your family, take care of the community, and we will see you on a future episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. Take care now.